Have you ever really stopped to think about what holds the internet together? Well, today we're going to get down to the basics and answer a huge question. What exactly is HTML?
Think about it. You click on links, you see pictures, you fill out forms, you do this stuff every single day. But what is the magic behind the scenes? How do we go from a totally blank screen to a website that you can actually use?
Well, here's the big secret. It all starts with a skeleton. Yep, a skeleton. Before a website can have fancy colors or cool animations, it needs a solid, sturdy structure. And that is exactly what HTML does. It provides the skeleton of the web.
Okay, so let's really dig into this idea of the web's skeleton. To make this super clear, we're going to use a simple analogy that I think makes everything just click. We're going to think about it like we're building a house.
So, picture this. A website is basically a digital house. The HTML, that's the skeleton, the bare-bones wooden frame that gives it its shape. Then you've got CSS. That's all the style, the paint, the wallpaper, the cool furniture. And then there's JavaScript. That's the function. You know, the electricity, the plumbing, the stuff that makes the house actually do things. For today, we are laser-focused on that very first, super important step, building that skeleton.
All right, so what does HTML even stand for? It's Hypertext Markup Language. Now, hypertext sounds complicated, but it just means text that has links in it. You know, the stuff you click on. And markup language? That just means it uses these special little markers or tags to tell your web browser how to show the content. It's not really a programming language that does complex logic. It's all about structure.
So, how do we actually lay this foundation? Well, here's the cool part. Every single web page on the entire internet, from massive sites like Google all the way down to your local pizza place's website, they all follow the exact same unbreakable rules. This blueprint is pretty simple. It's got three main parts. First up, you have the HTML tag. Think of this like the property line for your house. Absolutely everything has to go inside it. Then, inside that, you've got two main areas. There's the head, which is full of info about the page for the browser, like the little title you see up in the Browser tab. And then there's the body, and that's the main event. That's where all the stuff you actually see on the page lives. All the text, the images, you name it. So how do we actually give these instructions to the browser? We use something called tags. And they're really simple. They're just keywords wrapped up in these little angle brackets. Most of the time, they come in pairs. You have an opening tag to say, hey, start this thing, and then a closing tag to say, okay, we're done. And you can always spot the closing tag because it has that little /. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. See this p tag? That's our instruction to the browser to start a paragraph. Then you have your actual text. This is a paragraph. And finally, you have the p tag, which tells the browser, all right, the paragraph is over now. The whole thing together is one complete instruction. And this is actually a pretty important little detail. Those bits in the angle brackets, the p and /p, those are the tags. But the whole shebang, the opening tag, the content in the middle, and the closing tag, that entire unit is called an element. And that's the real building block of any web page. All right, so our foundation is laid. The basic structure is there. Now it's time for the fun part, building out the rooms. How do we actually put stuff inside our house? How do we add the text and all the content that people are actually going to read?
Well, one of the most important ways to structure your content is with headings. You've got the H1 tag, which is like the giant headline on the front page of a newspaper. It's your main title. Then you can use H2, H3, and so on, all the way down to H6 for smaller and smaller subheadings. It's a really great way to create a clear outline for your page.
And what about just regular text? For that, you just wrap it up in a p tag, which, you guessed it, stands for paragraph. And the browser is smart. It knows that a p tag means it's a block of text, so it'll automatically add a little space before and after to make it easy to read. Super simple, but super effective.
Okay, so our house has rooms now, but it's kind of useless if it's just a sealed box, right? We need doors to go to other places, and we need windows to see things. In the world of HTML, our doors and windows are links and images.
This right here is that hypertext part of HTML we talked about. To make a link, you use an A tag, which stands for anchor. But just having the tag isn't enough. You have to tell it where to go. That's what the href attribute is for. It stands for hypertext reference. You just pop the web address in there, and that tells the browser exactly where that link should take you.
Adding an image works in a really similar way. We use the image tag.
Now, you might notice this one's a little different. It doesn't need a closing tag. And instead of href, an image needs a source attribute, which just means source. That's where you tell the browser the exact file name or web address of the picture you want to show.
Okay, so our house has rooms, it has doors, it has windows. Now it's time to actually furnish the place. And HTML gives us some really great tools for organizing all our stuff neatly, specifically with lists and tables.
So what if you just have a bunch of items and the order they're in doesn't really matter? Well, you'd use an unordered list or a UL tag. Then each thing on your list gets its own LI tag, which just means list item. And what you get is a nice, clean bullet point list. It's perfect for something like a grocery list or, a list of pizza toppings.
But what if the order is important, like really important? For that, you use an ordered list or OL. The setup is exactly the same. You still use those lead tags for every single item, but this time the browser automatically numbers them for you, 1, 2, 3, and so on. This is perfect for things like following a recipe or step-by-step instructions. And finally, for information that's really structured, like in a grid, there's nothing better than a good old table. You start with a table tag, then you create each row with a TR tag, and then each little box or cell in that row gets a TD tag. I know, it can look a little complicated at first, but it is the absolute best way to show data like store hours or schedules.
And that's really the heart of it, seriously. Headings, paragraphs, links, images, lists, and tables. With just those basic building blocks, you now understand the fundamental language that literally builds almost every single page on the entire internet. It's the skeleton, and now you know how it's put together.
So, we did it. We've built the frame of our house. It's strong, it's structured, but let's be honest, it's not very pretty yet. It's not decorated. And that's where those other parts come in. The next step would be to grab the paintbrush, which is CSS, and then call in the electrician and the plumber, which is JavaScript.
But for right now, you get the architecture. You can now look at literally any website out there and see the invisible skeleton that's holding it all up. You can see how it's built. So the only question left is, now that you can see the skeleton, what kind of house are you going to build?